wanted the best? You've got the best podcast, the hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. It's Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com, thechrisvossshow.com. Welcome to the show, my family and friends. I think I hit that. I think we should do a survey where people judge my first intro singing. I love it. I hate having to do it after 14 years, but I love when you guys come up to me at shows and you're like, the Chris Voss Show! And I'm like, security, run away. I wear a Kevlar vest whenever I go to shows because of you people. No, I love you guys as an audience. You guys are the greatest audience in the world. Don't tell anyone I said that. You're the Chris Voss Show is the family that loves you, but doesn't judge you. We've got to order the shirts for that one of these days. As always, we appreciate the 5-star reviews you give us on the old iTunes there. You have to download the iTunes and put on there. But refer the show to your family, friends, and relatives. We're putting out just amazing stuff. 14 years. We'll be going on our 15th year, after September, I think, or August. And I just feel old and tired, which is all the more reason to further show your family and friends, because I don't know, I could be like Neil Peart. I could kick off from Rush. I could kick off anytime now. I'm 55. No, just kidding. But the show will always go on because it's on Google. Anyway, guys, youtube.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss. Check out the big 130,000 LinkedIn group and the LinkedIn newsletter. That thing is crazy, man. Just grows like a weed. Like every day I go on there and I'm like, who the hell keeps subscribing to this thing? I didn't know there were that many people on LinkedIn. I wish. We're not quite there yet, but we're working on it. And all that good stuff. Today, we have an amazing gentleman on the show, amazing guest, amazing mind. And as always, we only bring the best. We don't let anybody on this show. I don't know how I got on, but I run the thing. That's how I got on. But let me ask you this. You ever been going through your life and you reach a moment in your career where you notice that, hey, man, my career's going okay, but I'm really unhappy. I went through this in my life. I grew up poor and I made some money and built a lot of companies, had the big house in the canyon, threw all the big parties of 300, 400 people. And I thought my life was great. And it was kind of like that Styx song, as long as I'm buying, everyone's happy or whatever. And but I was really miserable. And I built the life of my dreams of multiple properties in different states and multiple companies in different states. And I thought I was happy. Turns out I wasn't. And turns out I was people didn't like me either, even though I was paying for all the drinks, and so sometimes we live in a scarcity mindset, and we have a gentleman who's going to be talking about that and how his relationships were terrible, his family suffered, and how he overcame that. And I think we've all kind of gone through that journey as people, where we think that maybe money or success or careers or getting a wife and kids or a husband and kids or whatever that thing is, okay, if we square this round thing, we will have completeness and whatever. And we find that maybe the internals are our problem, which was the internals with me and still with me. As anyone knows, I have problems, and my psychiatrist says so. Jesse Fisco joins us on the show today. He is an amazing gentleman. He's created multiple 7-figure companies and runs them, and has participated in raising capital, being an angel investor, and he's done multiple real estate transactions. He's done he found himself in the same journey that I just talked about, where he was doing his career, building companies and being unhappy and living a scarcity mindset, and his family was suffering and he was suffering as well. I'm sure we'll get into that. And then he did multiple reprograms and meditation, and he's aligned his life through several changes. And now he coaches and helps other people do that as well. Welcome to the show, Jesse. How are you?
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Chris. And wow, quite the introduction there. And I'm glad to hear that I'm not the only one that's been through some things in business and life. So,
that's the beautiful part about stories. And that's one of the things that I love about the show. And I hope my audience always gets, because I plug it ad nauseum. But stories are the owner's manual of life. And it's interesting when we open up, when we start talking and sharing our stories and sharing our journey, how much we find that a lot of people are kind of on the same boat.
Absolutely. And I think that there's a lot of vulnerability that has to be shown there. But as you open up, you start to learn you're not alone, right?
Yeah,
And that there are resources out there to help you. And sometimes feel like you're floating on an island. But
yeah.
it's interesting if you change your perception, you might see that there's thousands of people on that same island.
Yeah, and they can help. They have tools that help. And so we're going to talk about some of your tools today that helped you, that you're using to help other people. Give us your .com so people can find you on the interwebs, please.
Yeah, theemergecoaching.com. Or you can visit jessefisco.com as well.
There you go. And what do you do over there? Give us a 30,000 overview.
Hey, I help entrepreneurs create more time, more money, more fun in their business. And that is through practical, easy, scientific measures that are not like your typical affirmations and stuff. It's very detailed and you get very granular and you find a lot of opportunity and a lot of things about yourself you didn't know were possible.
There you go. So let's do a hero's journey with you. Tell us your story. What was your upbringing? How did you get here? I know you're in the real estate business and a lot of other things. How did you get down this road? And tell us about what kind of reached that point with you and your family where you achieved stuff, but you were unhappy.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was my wife and I started a real estate career. And what I found was through our real estate career, I was working and I liked to work and I became a workaholic. Like that was
Mm,
really something I was, you know, addicted to. And it was all based off an idea or something that I believed that I could go back in time and realize at the age of like 7 or 8 years old, my dad would say, in order to make more money, you need to work more hours. Right. And that was something that he would ingrain and instill in his children. And so my dad would work 16 hours. Well, my dad also was, heavily into drugs at that time. And that's what led to separation. And so this whole idea for me was like, I don't want to be like my dad, but then for whatever reason, that core program stuck with me. So, fast forward a couple of years into the real estate business, I'm working 16, 17 hours. I'm like, nah, screw the family reunion. We're not going on a vacation. 5 years into my life, I realized I haven't been on a vacation. And I jumped into work and be a entrepreneur in my own business. But I was actually an employee in my own business. I wasn't an entrepreneur. I was working. I was an employee. And so that's what ended up leading up to the point where my wife looked at me and she's like, "Hey, I don't know you, and I don't think you know you."
wow.
Kind of that, dodgeball, I know you, I know that you know that I know you type of thing, right?
I know that, and the know
Yeah.
you know me know that, so I know that as well.
Yeah, it's just kind of, funny,
Just
but
piling on there.
yeah, all this stuff, and I just looked at her, I was like, "You're right, I don't even know myself." I
Hmm.
I don't. And I, at that point, was sitting there trying to figure out what the next steps were in my life
There
and,
you go.
what was the most important. So as I got a little bit more detailed into what I wanted, I started looking for people to help me get there.
There
And
you go.
noticed once again, I wasn't on the island myself. I hired some guru that literally bends the mind and starts to get you to think and did a lot of hypnotic, visualizing what my life would be like if I could live my life without all the other ideas and thoughts that I thought were holding me back
Mhm.
and realize that.
And you built a lot of companies over the time. You're in the real estate business. You're in several businesses in multiple states. I think you're in Utah and Tennessee a lot.
Yes.
There
Yeah.
you go. And then you've done some angel investing as well. It's interesting to me the mindset, and I saw this as I came up because I grew up poor. I mean, we had welfare food in the from the Mormon church in my fridge, so I couldn't bring my friends over because they'd be like, your parents are on welfare. And they weren't always on welfare. They had, that we had up and down times. We had a child that was born with cerebral palsy, which cost, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So
Right.
there were some, financial issues that weren't always of our making. But it was one of those things. I grew up with a lot of lack, and I wanted stuff. And I was born and raised in Hollywood, so my parents rented apartments there. So I grew up seeing a lavish lifestyle and going, I want that. But then I grew up poor, and I'm like, how do I get to that part? And so I, like you, live my life where I try to fill in all those blanks. And I think a lot of people, I used to have people come up and say to me, I want to be like you. You make enough money where you can do whatever you want, and you have this freedom. And I'm like, I don't have freedom. I'm running a high wire that's way high up in the sky that I can't fall. I can't quit. I can't just step off and go someplace else and go, hey, do you want to pay me XYZ? Like, yeah, starting what?
Yeah.
Um, and and I filled in all the blanks, man. I had all the toys. I had a house, a giant house in the canyon full of ping pong table, foosball, air hockey, jacuzzi. I used to throw 400 people parties at my house, and in Utah. And boy, the cops were not happy. And but I was still just miserable. And then I found Fight Club, and that movie changed my life. And some of what it talks about, is we fill in the blanks as men or as people, and we go, if I do this, get the career, get the wife, get the kids, get the husband, get the kids, all that stuff. I fill in the blanks, get all the details, I'll be fine. And then we wake up and we're just this person that's devoid of everything. We've ignored the most important part of us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, one of the things that we find of anyone that comes through our little mastermind group is that very thing. They've got the checklist and they're like, on paper, I should be happy, but internally, I feel seriously screwed up. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's funny because what we do is, as men, we're the provider, and
Mm,
entrepreneurial men are built different. I don't care. Like, you can convince me differently. You're not going to, because a lot of them come from, like you said, poor family. And it's a lot of this away from motivation. I want to get away from this crap.
mm,
Right. And I want something bigger for myself. I want my kids, my wife. We tell ourselves a story of all the reasons why we're doing what we're doing. But
mm,
ultimately, there's a reflection of, I am a selfish individual. This is not because of anyone else. This is all because this is what I want.
mm,
And that was a huge turning point for me. It was like, you know what? It's okay to be selfish. It's okay to admit that I'm doing this not for just my wife and kids, but I'm doing it for me personally.
mm,
And you know, as people come through this group, that's what we start to find is they've lost themselves, and then we help them get back to, all right, I am a selfish individual. The reasons why I'm doing this is not for anyone else but me.
mm.
And then we help them focus on what they want in their life. What is
Ah,
the 100 things? If money wasn't an issue, if time wasn't an issue, what are 100 things you'd like to do with your life?
mm,
And not only things but experiences. So, maybe you get into the material, and then you get
mm.
into the experiences of what you'd like to do.
There you
And
go.
as you do that, it opens up new avenues.
There you go. I'm still a selfish prick, though. I just study stoicism and enlightenment and some of the things that you talk about in your stuff, being in line with yourself. Let's get into that. Do you find a lot of people? I know mine is good. He is a selfish prick. Yeah, we've been listening to 14. So there you go. There's a bit of narcissism there. And I don't know. If you admit to being a narcissist, are you really a narcissist? I don't know. I'll talk to my psychiatrist later. He's working on lobotomy for me, being scheduled. So one thing you talk about is not being aligned with yourself. What does that mean? Because I don't know, you're one person, your one side of you is going one way. Does it my multiple personalities that are the problem, or what is alignment?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. It's like, do you want to go to this event? Yes or no? Deep down
Hmm.
inside, you're like, no, I don't want to go, but you're still going,
What
right?
if you hate people? No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, who knows? Like,
Some
but
people
for
do.
me, it was like, do I want to participate in this?
Hmm.
I mean, yes or no? And inside, I'd be like, I don't really want to do that. But then
Mm.
I'd feel guilty, right? Oh,
Oh.
well, if I say no to this event, then someone's going to be sad, or someone's going to be frustrated, or think I'm this or that. And there's no alignment. So then how can you be a leader if you're not aligned with what your vision is, your goal,
That's
right?
true. That's true.
So, I mean, for me, like, I you mentioned the shoe wall when we were jumping on the show. Like,
Mhm.
for me, I've got these shoes back here, and that is because it's aligned with who I am, right? But
Ah.
before, I wouldn't buy any shoes to express myself. It would just be like very basic. I wouldn't buy Nike or Lululemon or anything like that because I was just trying to fit in.
Mhm.
Even though that wasn't who I was.
There you go. Do you have any Payless shoes on that wall there?
No, no Payless shoes. No
So
way.
I grew up on Payless shoes, and my parents, God bless them, they were working really hard. But we got outfitted with the deal was when I grew up, and this is kind of a Gen X thing. The deal was you got one pair of Payless shoes, you got to choose, and you tried to choose something close to the Adidas everyone had.
Yeah.
They were big back then, and then you got two pairs of jeans and a couple shirts, whatever grandma gave you for shirts and socks, and then that was it for the year. You had to make that shit last.
Right.
And so
I
I'm
grew up
just
the same way.
did
Right?
you? Okay,
Yeah,
there you go.
most of it came from, like a Savers, or they call it the DI here in Utah.
There you go.
Yeah,
The desert industries. I've
you
been
find
there.
the best you could, and you'd wear it all year.
There you go. And man, if you got those things dirty or scuffed, those $10, $15 shoes, whatever the hell they were. I think there were 6 back in my day. I'm old people. But if you guys tune into the video on YouTube, check that out. Jesse's got this wall, this beautiful wall. I can see some Nikes there. I at least know what Nike logos look like. He's got
Yeah.
a whole wall behind him of all of his shoes, and his wife allows him to have that. Uh, So, you talk about being your authentic self. What does that mean? Because that's where I was really lost in not knowing who I was and focusing on, I'd focused on so many worldly things. I'd left my pot empty of being a human being, and it's still pretty empty, but let's talk about what you find in the world.
Yeah, I mean, being your full self, like, we hear from Tony Robbins and all these motivational speakers about this imaginary flow state, right?
Mhm.
Like, "Oh, I wanna be in flow because that's where all this amazing stuff happens." Well, you can't be in flow state if you're not being you.
That's true.
Like, what is flow state? I mean, you've got, whether you believe in a higher being or not, you've got these qualities, these gifts. I will call them a God-given, you know, gift of you as an individual. But if you're holding back from that, like, how are you supposed to be in a flow state or actually be the person you wanna be if you're too busy hiding behind the curtain based off of everyone else's feelings and emotions, and maybe even a feeling of undeserving? I don't
Mhm.
deserve to be myself.
Yeah.
I have an individual that came through our coaching, and he's like, "I feel that if I actually was the person I want to be, that the world wouldn't be able to contain me." And I'm like,
Wow.
"Wouldn't that be cool if you could?" Like,
Yeah.
how
And you
much more,
can.
yeah, how many
Yeah.
more people could you help that feel the
Mhm.
exact same way you do? But
Yeah.
that was literally what he told me, and it was a mind-shocking moment of, like, this whole mastermind that we have. It's bigger than just, helping people. It's helping people truly be aligned with what they want, to help them get into that flow state, to have these ideas and the creativity, and to allow themselves to realize there are no rules. There's no right from wrong. Granted, there's what the, federal government will tell us is a law,
Mhm.
but whether or not you decide to wear a pink shirt or a yellow shirt, there's no right from wrong with that. But for
Yeah.
whatever reason, some people box themselves in that.
They do, and I think a lot of people too get stuck in the serve role. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I've never had a wife and kids, but what I see from a lot of, like we mentioned before, with a lot of males and fathers, is they're in that provider protector role, and so they're usually busy trying to make money, go out there in the world and do stuff. I see women the same way nowadays. I see a lot of mothers that get stuck being they don't take care of themselves. They're and God bless mothers, but they don't take care of themselves. Mothers sometimes will eat last, or they'll eat as they're cooking food for everyone else. My
Right.
mother was the same way. She was doing everything for her children. She's still that way. And we get stuck in that mode, and then we don't fill our own tanks, and then we end up burnt out. We end up frustrated. We end up angry. Then no one really likes us because we're being horrible people, which I still am. But that seems to be the callback joke for the show. How bad of a horrible person Chris is. But that the journey to getting to that is something you help people do. You have a community over there as well. How do people onboard with you? How do they can they reach out to you? How can they get to know you better and get involved with what you're doing?
Yeah, I've got social media,
Mhm.
Jesse Fisco. You can literally Google search me with all the businesses. It will trace you back to me some way, shape, or form. But Instagram is where I've been, helping kind of create more of a following that way, at TikTok. But, honestly, just shooting me a personal message too. I'm
Mhm.
happy to take a text message and talk to people as well.
There you
I'm
go.
and it's just that, that sense of connection. I've had people text me at 3 in the morning, and I can't guarantee I'm awake, but at times
Mhm.
I am. Hey, I'll respond and engage in a conversation.
They do that sometimes with my OnlyFans channel. No, I'm just kidding, people. I don't have an only. That's an OnlyFans joke. OnlyFans jokes, they always pay off. What other things are you finding that people are struggling with? You talked about the flow state. We talked about getting aligned and
Yeah.
being your authentic self. You talk about what if versus,
What
let's
if?
see, what if. I
Yeah.
want to make sure I read that right. What does that mean?
Yeah, so we always have the people that go towards a negative. What if I do this? And what
Mm,
if this happens? And we can always list off the negatives, right? We
mm,
were conditioned from children as a culture, as a society to look at the negative, what could happen. And
mm,
there's so many people that have this idea of like, man, what if I could actually do this? But then it's greeted by the negative. And so what we do through our coaching is we have a lot of people that come in, they're like, okay, I'm going to do this, and then as they start to go negative, we're like, well, what if the opposite happens? Right. And you start to paint a different picture, starting to paint it into a more positive. What if I join the Chris Voss show? And what if there's someone that's listening to this show that goes, this is exactly what I need? And they sign up for my coaching program.
mm.
Right. As
Yeah,
opposed to, what if I get on the Chris Voss show and I, make a total, idiot out of myself talking?
that's
You know,
my job.
yeah, but
That's my
that's the
job on the
type
show.
of that's the type of questioning, but it's we are conditioned as human beings to look at the negative. I
Yeah.
mean, everything from the news to what you're seeing online, the things that resonate with us. I mean, there's a reason why murder podcasts are so high, right? It's because we like that negative, but we need to condition ourselves to the higher and to the, like, elevated state of thinking bigger for ourselves because we have that capability.
There you go. I think we've talked about this recently on the show, but Tony Robbins used to do this thing where he talked about how one person can go into a party and they can see all the negative stuff, and they can see all the people not having a good time, the people that are bored or maybe unhappy at the thing, and they're like, "Oh, that was a horrible party." And then another person can go to the same party and they can see everyone having fun, and they focus on the fun aspects of the party,
Mhm.
and so they come away with two different experiences. And so, would you say that sometimes, having a perspective where you're either looking for the good or the bad, or your potential as opposed to, well, I don't really want to succeed or have a big business because there's a lot of problems that come with it. And, you're making excuses for why you don't want to go for it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I had lunch with a gentleman the other day and he's like, well, what if all this negative stuff happens? And I'm like, what if you could actually just work and like you could work 2 hours a day and then you could go to Disneyland or you could
Mm,
with your family or do these things. What if you could do that? And
yeah.
he's like, "Well, I've never thought of it that way." And I'm like, "It's because you're conditioned to think of negative." Like,
Hmm.
even in the words, like, a lot of people say, if I pay you a compliment and you, like, start to play this false humility of like, "Oh, you know what? I'm actually that's nice, but your shirt looks better than mine." Like, it's just false humility, and that's what
Yeah.
we've been tailored to do, is to put ourselves down, and
Hmm.
over time, the more we put ourselves down, do you believe that the unconscious mind or anything internally believes that we're worth or amount to anything? Not likely, because we keep telling ourselves we're not.
Why do you think people do that? Is it because maybe socially it's unacceptable to talk about money and success a little bit? I mean, you kind of bro culture if you go over Facebook or certain places, but for the most part, people kind of frown on it. Trying to walking around pounding your chest is kind of frowned on in society, where it's like, hey man, don't run around telling people you're bigger than they are because you'll probably upset their apple cart and they'll be like, "Oh my god, I'm not as good," or whatever that. Why do you think that is? I'm just throwing a few examples out of, I don't know.
I don't have the answer, but from my perception, what
Damn
I
it, Jesse.
believe
Thought you had
but
the answer.
from my perception, I believe it's because we don't see the value in ourselves. Right?
Mm,
As culture. So when
there you go.
someone's up there that does see the value, it's either magnetizing and we're like, I want to be like that person, or
Mhm.
it's very much a turn off because we're like, well, this person thinks that he's egotistical or she, like they think
Yeah,
they're full of themselves, when really like we're just negatively cultured to look at that and say, well, this guy's got to be a complete douche of an individual. When realistically, that same guy that we perceive as a douche is actually, buying a home for someone or doing amazing things, but because they're a little bit more confident in themselves, it becomes a self-reflection of, am I confident in me? It's not, it has nothing to do with the other person.
there you go. And sometimes, I don't know, I mean, people have I think you nailed it on the head. There's an empty vessel where maybe deep down we don't feel that we're worthy of love, of success, of money. There's so many different powerful tools that come from being successful financially. I mean, you can give to other people, you can provide jobs to people, you can improve people's lives. I know I've done a lot of charity in my time, and you can't do that if you're just trying to get by. And so there's a lot of good you can do in the world. I mean, there's a lot of good you can do if you're not financially successful. You can go volunteer and help with things, and being a good human being, that kind of helps. But there's so much more you can do, and you and I had to go through those same sort of journeys of self, going from being poor to suddenly identity of being successful. And some people go through imposter syndrome. I probably went through it when I was coming up. That I was just I seemed to just always be fighting everybody who was trying to get in my way back in the brick and mortar days. It seemed like there was always somebody who was like trying to hold me back, regulators, different licensing and stuff. There was always some battle you had to have. And then of course, once you become successful, you're either suing people or they're suing you, and you're having all sorts of court battles over stuff. It's like when you get rich, like court is just like the new war of what used to be medieval. But I think that's what the problem I had was the same you had. Once I became successful, I was like, who is this person, man? Who is this vessel that I'm wandering around with? And why is he so miserable and unhappy? And why are pretty much everybody around me so miserable and happy, even though I'm buying all the drinks?
Yeah. It's crazy. It reminds me of a story. So we, my wife and I'm like, you know what? I need something for me. I just
Mhm.
need something for me. So I went out and I bought a McLaren. For those that are familiar with super,
There you go.
went out and
Nice
bought the
car.
car. But then the minute I bought that car, I was like, it can't just be for me. It has to be for everyone else, right?
Oh.
And so I started this idea of let's share this car with everyone of our clients, right?
Hmm.
As a client appreciation.
Hmm.
Well, this car got destroyed,
Oh, really?
right?
Were
And
you renting it out to people or letting them
I was
drive it or
just letting them
something?
drive it, and so one
Oh.
guy, goes too fast and crashes, and I have to pay for a new front bumper, and, someone else jumps in, they break the handle on the door, and McLarens are not cheap, they're prone to break, like, and those were things that I found that I was just frustrated. The car, what I thought was for me, had become more of an issue, and it would sit in the shop more than I was able to drive it. And that was one of the things that I had to go back and reflect is why did I buy this car? Well,
Mhm.
I couldn't drive this car and feel good and feel successful because I felt guilty. There was this remorse here.
Ah.
And so there was that imposter syndrome of like, I can't show it. I've got to provide it to other people. And I found that with myself too, is I would throw massive, massive client appreciation events. We're talking $10,000 events for, 200 people, and we're just spending a ton of money. And then one day I woke up and all that money's just gone.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's because I felt guilty of having
Mhm.
that. And it was that internal, like, you can't be successful or you're going to piss someone off. And what it came down to was looking in the mirror and saying, well, no, you can be successful and you can still be a good person, but you don't have to give everything away.
You made me realize something. I had an epiphany on that. Every now and then, this is how I learn stuff. Is I have people on the show. I learn probably more than my audience. But I talked about the big parties I used to throw.
Yeah.
And, when we had big companies, we had an acting and modeling agency with about 400 people in it. We had thousands of employees over the years. So like half the town of Salt Lake knew me at one point, and in the early 2000s and late 90s, early 2000s. And so I would throw huge parties at my house about every 3 months. And like it would be 200 to 400 people until the cops finally said enough of that. And the parties just kept getting bigger and bigger, and I'd throw them constantly. And then after the cops shut it down, we'd have private parties of small after parties, after club stuff. And I go to clubs all the time, but a lot of times I was throwing these parties seeking approval
Yes.
from people, and I've kind of had an epiphany that that's what I was doing. I was trying to buy all my friends. I was trying to fill this void. I was single, having a good time, but I was trying to get everyone to love me and like me, and the parties would be over, and I'd just be like, the next morning after everyone's gone, I'd just be like, well, okay, well, I'm alone again. And then after a few months, I'd be like, let's throw another party. But I'd throw these huge parties and we'd spend tons of money, Dom Perignon, and just craziness. And then every now and then the cops going, there are people parked half a mile down your house. From your house that are going to your party. At one point, they shut down like 2 lanes. I used to, my house is an old mill. If you know old mill, there at the reservoir. And so they would shut down, the cops would shut down like both ends of the street there and start diverting traffic away. But I was trying to fill a void, and I would go shopping and buy shit, and I just feel like there was this empty void that I just never could fill. And now I realize that's probably what I was doing that whole time. And until I got good with myself and started going, who is this being that I've been dealing with for all these years, and what the fuck is he about, and why don't we just calm the fuck down and quit trying to, the Fight Club was a real big thing for me, because it was like we buy things to impress people and don't give a shit anymore. No one gave a crap about my big house. No one gave a crap about my big parties. No one gave a crap about my BMWs and
Right.
all that stuff. In the end, they didn't care. And I'm like, well, so why am I doing this? And that journey, led me to where I'm at to now, an empty vessel at 55.
It's definitely a process and learning the intention behind it. But I mean, I could go deep and say that most of the stuff that's happened from us is what we experienced from the ages of 5 to 9 years old. And
Um,
it's just a hybrid, right? It's just like it's continued to evolve over time as we've experienced life differently from,
mhm,
but it's the same filter. It's like a program on a computer.
mhm,
Imagine running a Windows 98 with nowadays we're like way far in advance, right? Or if you're cruising around with the original iPhone versus now the 14, night and day difference. But a lot of us have that same program in our minds from the ages of 5 to 9 years old, and it's because we've never really gone internally to reset or upload a new one.
there you go. And sometimes we're haunted by childhood trauma, because a lot
Yes.
of people have that. And the sad part about life is more people should get psychiatry at a younger age. Like I have people that, what would you go back and tell your 16-year-old self? Go see a fucking psychiatrist, man. And they're like always surprised by it. They're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, yeah. I should have. I want to. God, if I could go back and sit down and talk about stoicism, hand myself meditations by Marcus Aurelius and Seneca and Epictetus and different things. A good psychologist to go, hey man, you grew up with a kind of messed up childhood. You grew up with lack, and you want to go to here. Here's what you need to change your mindset. But sadly, a lot of people don't wait. They wait until they're at a crisis point, right?
Mhm.
And that's probably where people reach out to you. They're at that crisis point. They're at that dichotomy or wherever, where they're like, I'm living one life and I'm someplace else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
A lot of them reach out at that crisis moment, which is too late already. Like you're at the point where like I can't do this anymore. I'm either going to quit my job, I'm going to, my
Mhm.
empire I built, I'm going to walk away from, or they're talking about walking away from this earth in general. Like,
Mhm.
and it's easy to say, for me, like I was never at that point in my life, right? But then the reality hit that I was, and I had been in that
Mhm.
point for years. So like you mentioned, a psychiatrist, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I can definitely coach and help from different standpoints, and our models go into business as well.
Mhm.
Like, we had an epiphany the other day is like every time we send a text message to our team, it takes two or three people out of their quote unquote flow state. And
Mhm.
so we've got to update this and make a tweak and make those changes. But those are things in business or like, if we're gonna sell our business to an exit of $250 million, and which is what we're hoping to do with our real estate company, we've got to
Mhm.
document everything.
Yep.
So then we go into the what do we need to do differently to help everyone feel, resourceful, and then also what do we need to do to document? And so it
Mhm.
becomes this like business and mind like creation that allows people once again to have more time, more money, more fun.
Yeah. And you help entrepreneurs specifically. I mean, entrepreneurs, we're kind of in that same mindset like I talked to before, the provider male, the mom who takes care of everything. We're so busy trying to run everything 24/7. I did the same thing you did, where I really burn out. I wasn't taking vacation for years. I started taking weekend vacations just whenever I wanted and getting away for weekends. And so those started filling in the blanks. But I really didn't take care of myself because you have that fear that, if I leave my business, if I don't delegate, the stuff won't get done right, it'll crash.
Yeah.
And you're so used to that kind of hamster wheel mindset where you're like, I just need to do a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And then and you're just fried at
Yeah.
both ends of the stick. And, I reached a point where I would be like, can I have a dream that isn't about the business I'm doing the next day? Like I would have dreams about what I was going to do the next day, who I was going to fire, what meetings I was going to have, like, it was insane, and every now and then I have a meeting about, I don't know, Brown Eyed Girl or I don't know, beach, and, I'd be like, "Holy crap, that was really nice." But, I mean, it was so invasive, it was taking over my dreams, it was taking over everything. Eat, breathe, sleep business, I wasn't taking any fun time out for myself.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something, I mean, I had the epiphany a couple months ago. If I wanted to take a 3-month sabbatical from my business,
Mhm.
what do I need to change? And
Mm.
one of the things was, it needs to start now. So that day I said, "Okay, I'm shutting it all off." My phone goes off, my team operates, and we did that. The feedback was phenomenal. They're like, "I actually feel like you're not micromanaging," and I learned that I was a bottleneck in my own business.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so after taking that feedback, I'm like, "Great, I trust you guys." A transaction that was gonna make $13,000 that was kinda rocky, they figured it out. And
Mhm.
so it's still closed. So the next week I said, "Hey, let's all jump in the car on a Sunday afternoon." We're 9 hours away from California. I took my family to Disneyland for a week. It didn't answer my phone once,
There you go.
right?
There you
Because
go.
I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Like, I wanted to jump in and go somewhere and have the money and have the freedom, and that's what I realized I needed to start working towards, right?
There you go.
And so I gotta go live that dream as opposed to just dreaming about it.
There you go. You should check out this book. We had an author on recently, Wayne M. Zell, who's a big CPA and attorney, and it was called the Your Multi-Million Dollar Exit. And
Mm,
he talks about how to plan for turning over businesses and selling them. Just a plug there if
yeah,
you want to check it out. But you're right. Everything's got to be prepared. You've got to have a team in place that can take over. That people are going to look for in the exit and stuff. And a lot of entrepreneurs don't build for an exit. I mean, I never really thought about that until somebody came on my show when I was somewhere in my 50s, and I was like, "What? I
yeah,
was built for empire," and which is a great way to burn yourself the hell out, especially doing something you don't love. Most of my companies I never really loved. I loved them as my children, but I didn't love some of the industries I was in because I was more of an investor.
mhm,
And I love being CEO of anything. I'll work for free if you put CEO on my card and I can innovate and create. I mean, I love
right,
that part of it. But really, my podcast is about the only thing I've ever fallen in love with. And I love talking to people. I love learning from people. I love going on a journey, and I do that in my private life. I ask people, so what's going on with you? Who are you? And where are you going? I'm sick of myself. I don't want to hear any more about me. Other than good jokes I can set up using me as a punchline,
mhm.
which is what this callback joke has been on this show. What else have we touched on? What other things are you helping people with or finding that entrepreneurs are really struggling with?
It's a great question. There's so many, and I think the last thing I would hit is rewarding yourself for your accomplishments. That's
Mhm.
number one thing that you could start doing right now that would start to change your perception and your reality. I mean, we
Mhm.
mentioned the shoe wall, right?
There
Every
you
time
go.
every time I close a real estate transaction or I get a new client, anytime I generate and make money, I'm buying a freaking pair of shoes.
There you go. Note to self: get a shoe wall.
Yeah, there you go. Get a shoe wall. But the thing is like it's become this ongoing. I didn't know why. I just said I'm gonna start doing this and rewarding myself. Well, first time I bought a pair of shoes for myself, the next month I had a massive growth in my business.
Wow.
And it was because it was like I gave myself permission to accept the fact that I'm doing something, that a lot of people won't do. And it
Mhm.
doesn't even matter what they're thinking. I'm doing something I didn't think was capable for myself, which was taking care of me. So then it started to go up and up and up. And then there was one month I said, I'm going to change. I'm going to buy sunglasses.
Mm.
And it wasn't motivating enough. My business the next month, absolute garbage. No excuse, no reason why. But it was like I found something that really motivated me.
Mhm.
And it's like a dolphin in a pool. Every time the dolphin does a trick, he gets a fish.
Mhm.
And the dolphin will learn more tricks over and over and over again every time you give him a fish. And before you know it, you have an entire show. And that's
Mhm.
what I've lived my whole reward system off of is every time I do this, I get a pair of shoes. And there are months where I have, a shoe a day come into my house. And it's gotten to the point, like we joke about the shoe wall. It's getting to the point where I've got to find that next motivator because I'm gonna get out of my house in my own shoes, right?
There
So,
you go.
but
Well,
there's
I
just
see an empty wall behind you.
yeah,
So,
that's the
there's
next one. But this is, things like that. Start rewarding yourself. I had an entrepreneur come through and he was like, "I gotta buy a $200 microscope. I need to buy this for myself." And he told me a story. He said, "I walked in and, I walked back out of the store. I couldn't do it." And he's like, and then I told myself, "How stupid is this? This is a $200 item." So then he
Mhm.
walks back in again, and then he walks out, and he's like, "I just felt like I didn't deserve it." And then he walked
Wow.
in and bought it, and he's like, "Oh my gosh." And now he's consistently rewarding himself, and his business has grown, his
Mhm.
happiness has grown, and he's like, "I see," like, just from that small little action right there and piece of encouragement, he's like, "I see the whole value of this group."
Mhm.
And it's unlocked a lot for him, and that's all it takes is to just start recognizing yourself for your accomplishments in
Yeah.
some aspects of your life.
Taking space for yourself, rewarding yourself. That was the thing, I was buying all this stuff to impress people.
Mhm.
And like I said, it's a famous Fight Club line. We buy things to impress people who don't give a shit. And I'd have people that say to me, "Why do you need to own all this? Why do you need to do all that?" And I'd just be like, "Well, I did it to impress people."
Right.
And then I started going, I want to impress myself.
Yes.
And what do I really like? And I don't need to run around trying to get people's approval and focus on. And what I always counsel entrepreneurs to is find something you love doing. It makes all the difference in waking up every morning. It makes all the difference in what you do if you have a passion for it. And I think what you've done is you've kind of found some different ways to reward yourself that reward your passion, the passion that you have, and by doing so, that puts you in that flow state where, if you just connected to yourself, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel
Yeah.
more connected. I'm driving the vehicle I wanna drive without
Hmm.
any worry about what other people think. And
Yeah.
then, someone says, "Oh my gosh, I like your shoes," instead of, like, downplaying, it's like, "Thank you."
Yeah.
Like,
Thank you.
just move on.
Yeah. There
And
you go.
you take the worry and the stress out of your life and create a life that you wanna live, and it really doesn't matter if someone else thinks that your life is wrong or not because there is no right or wrong.
Yeah.
It's
It's
what's
it's
right is what's right for you.
There you go. It's like a Fight Club again. People don't give a shit. Like, there are people that I still know who walk around life and they really think people are like half the neighborhood sitting around going, "What is Bob doing today? Oh my
Yeah,
God, like they're spending all their goddamn time focused on you,
yeah,
and they really don't give a shit. Like they're just like, I don't. There's a Bob in the neighborhood.
right,
And, we live that life of, keep up with the Joneses, fear of missing out. We've got to fit in and do what everybody else does. And, you know, uh, and sometimes it's like, hey, man, just make yourself happy. Find your journey. Find your purpose in life. I think
yeah,
that's a big thing for people. They don't really find their purpose. They think that okay, if I adopt these social constructs of, okay, I get a wife and kids, am I happy now? Then I'll be happy. If I get a business, I'll be happy. If I get the career, I'll be happy. If I get the next job promotion, I'll be happy. If I get next more money this year, I'll be happy. We're always putting off that happiness when
mhm,
really we just need to maybe be happy and reward ourselves now, pat ourselves on the back.
yeah, or know exactly what makes us happy and then go do that thing,
Ah, yeah,
right?
that helps too.
If we don't have a map of what makes us happy and
Yeah.
we're just going off of someone else's map, well, no wonder we're miserable.
Exactly. And that's what a lot of people do. That's why people have midlife crisis. I remember growing up when I was young and I was like, there's this midlife crisis thing that guys go through. How do I keep from having that? Like, I don't want to live my life where I wake up at 40 or 45 and, suddenly I'm buying red sports cars. Like, I just soon buy the red sports car now.
Go purple.
and live that life. And
Yeah,
so I wanted to live a life where I wouldn't go through a midlife crisis or burnout. I've gone through a lot of epiphany moments and a lot of learning over the years. The interesting thing about being 50 is I'm 55 now, but around 50 you wake up and you kind of look back and you go, Jesus, that's a mess I left behind. Okay, I think I see that some psychological problems I have. So it's best not to wait until then, when you're on the downside of a marriage or you're getting divorced because you've been unhappy and a miserable person to be around, and everything else, and try and do preventative care, if you will, now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I mentioned earlier in the show, my wife said, "I don't know who you are, and I don't think you know who you are."
Mm,
And fast forward a couple of years, and she's like, "Man, you are a different you, and I like that a lot."
there you go.
Right? And it's one of those things that, you revive your relationship because you start focusing internally. You clean out your inner vessel first, right? Like
Hmm.
here in Utah is a very spiritual state, and that's something that they pump in the Bible a lot is clean out your inner vessel. Well, you got to go internally first, and then everyone will start to love the wine you pour.
There you go. That's a great saying. What's inside of us is, and filling that tank is so important, because if we have that right, then everything else seems to fall into place. But if we're just building a structure on sand, and we're not taking care of the foundation of who we are, you know we're just building stuff that can get knocked over very easily. And I've gone through some cathartic times in my life where I think we all have, where I found that sometimes I built the wrong way, and it's time to go back and go, hey, we need to redesign that. So,
Mhm.
and it's a great way for people to reach that moment of thought and reach out to you. So tell us how people can do business with you and reach out to you and get involved in your programs.
Yeah, you can learn more about me at jessefisco.com, or you can visit theemergecoaching.com,
Hmm.
and that will get you connected with me. We can have an exchange via Voxer as well. You can add me at jfisco371 on Voxer. Just send me a message, and we'll engage that way as well. It's really easy to get in contact with me.
There you go. Thanks for coming on the show, Jesse. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Chris, for having me. It's been a phenomenal time.
There you go. Lots of learning and stuff that people can do, whether entrepreneurs or human beings or just working in careers. There's something better than being happy in life and doing what you love and loving what you do. And maybe you just don't love what you do because you're unhappy on the inside. And sometimes, you awaken and you go, wow, I actually can find ways to love what I do and enjoy this process, like we talked about with the party. So thanks so much for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, youtube.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss, all those crazy places we're on the internet. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe, and we'll see you.